Hi, I'm Dr. Linda Spink, President of Los Angeles Harbor College, and welcome back to another edition of the President's Roundtable. Each month, my goal on this show is to introduce you to those individuals that affect either our college or our local community, as well as to discuss issues and events that concern our students and our local residents. I'm very proud to tell you that the President's Roundtable comes to you on Harbor College Television via Comcast Cable, and I'd like to thank Congresswoman Jane Harman, Harbor College Vice President Bobby McNeil, and Harbor College Humanities and Fine Arts Professor Larry Heimgartner, whose efforts make this show and this station completely possible. My guest on today's episode is a San Pedro icon. Those of you who regularly read the Daily Breeze will recognize him from his weekly column in More magazine. Please welcome with us today columnist, author, movie reviewer, toy maker, former longshoreman, and I understand character, Tank Nelson.
Thank you, Linda. Good to be here.
Tank grew up in San Pedro, going to Barton Hill and Leland Street elementary schools, graduated from San Pedro High School. He retired 11 years ago from a 44-year career in longshoring. Tank's had many careers and experiences that you are surely going to find very interesting. Tank, I'm really delighted that you're here with us today.
Oh, it's wonderful to be here.
So when we started talking about who we were going to invite for this month's show, someone suggested Tank Nelson, and I said, why haven't I met this guy? You sounded fascinating. So let's talk to me. Tell me about growing up in San Pedro and going to school, and we'll eventually work our way to how you got at the Breeze.
Well, if you want to talk growing up in San Pedro, of course, I was born in Barton Hill. Went to Barton Hill School, later went to Leland Street School. And about growing up in San Pedro, just a little anecdote of that area and time. This is 1946. I'm in Leland Street School, and a friend of mine from Barton Hill came to visit. I live on 26th and Walker this time. Friend comes to visit, and we're laughing and joking about things. Well, at the time.
And you're about how old?
I'm
8, 10?
13.
Okay.
Yeah, 13. Well, I was probably 12, somewhere in there. Maybe we were talking and we're chatting, and he came up on the bus. Everybody traveled by bus in those days. Nobody had a car. So we're talking, and he says, what do you do around here? I says, well, the young guys, I'm big now, I was big for my age then, but I says, a lot of guys go over to the Army dump and kind of steal Army stuff. Well, Fort MacArthur out in the back of Fort MacArthur, there was an old Army dump. I mean, trash, weeds, broken boxes, that kind of thing. I mean, it looked like a dump. Mm-hmm. Of course, barbed wire, but still a dump.
Of course, that obviously didn't keep you out.
No, it didn't keep anybody out. Well, the Second World War, all soldiers were heroes. I mean, that was, you watch the newsreels, you watch the John Wayne movies, all soldiers were heroes. I mean, they were bigger than athletes, soldiers were the top of the line. Mm-hmm. Well, you could go in this place, and there'd be things like ammunition belts. Not ammunition, but just the belts that you can. Okay. There'd be those plastic liners for helmets, things of that nature. So
memorabilia that little boys would just love.
Yes,
right.
Any boy would love. So we go in. I'm telling you about my education career here. we go in, and we have this, that, take it out, and we put it under my house where I lived. And he stayed over. The next day we go back, and we're basically shopping. There's nobody there. The dogs are not there, and all that. So we got this stuff, and for whatever reason, I decided to go out over the fence. So I'm up the fence. We put some kind of coating over the barbed wire. I'm straddling the barbed wire, and a guy, I remember he's a captain, 2 bars. A captain walks up, brown uniform, with a .45. Now, a .45 is a big gun to start with, but when it's pointed at me, from
it's
about
even bigger.
5 feet away, it's a cannon. And he says, stop. I'm lucky I didn't have an accident, but I mean, I'm looking at him, he got me down off the fence. Well, from that, because of my home life, and because Ralph was the other guy, because of his home life, a judge decides that in regular school is not for us. So he sends, I don't know what happened I know later, but they said, well, I wind up in military school, which was a full reform school. I mean, the kind where you go in and right. When the gate closes, the chain goes on, and the same barbed wire of the place we have here.
Right.
So my 7th and 8th grade are in Mount Low Military Academy.
Interesting. Now, did your past history kind of fit along with that as well, or?
No. I was pretty much in it. I was big. I was shy. I was dumb as a stick. I mean, didn't do well in school. That type. I had asthma, and I'd missed lots of school. My father was a really good guy, but he was my only parent, and he was an alcoholic. So there was a lot of room to fool around. But anyway, I come out of military school. This is a
So
little
much
long
for
story.
fooling around.
But because he can't, the 48th strike on the waterfront, he can't afford to keep me there. So I get to come out. I guess the judge said, okay, it's 2 years is long enough. I get to come out, come back to Pedro High. Now, I didn't mean to go here, but this is how the name Tank came about. I just realized I was there. I came back to Dana. Well, in military school, I remember I was big, dumb, shy, and out of shape. When I went,
It's pretty apparent you're not dumb.
well,
but
whatever,
okay,
but I was
keep
then.
going. I hear
When
you.
I say, I should say uneducated.
There you go.
Well, in military school, they run you till you're tired. I mean, that's how they keep discipline. They just run you over an obstacle course so you can't, and you had to finish or you didn't get to eat. So I lost weight, grew taller. Also, in military school, if somebody wants to fight you, if they're your size, they can challenge you. And every Friday night, because I was the youngest, I was really big, but I was young. So every Friday night I got challenged to fight. So, I mean, it was big
This is how
gloves.
the
They couldn't hurt
military
you.
teaches our youth.
Oh yeah, but anyway, I come out of military school. Now I'm big and strong and uneducated, but came back to Dana. And there were, in those days, the boys and the girls were separated at recesses and all that. And I'm on the guy's side. I'm standing there, and I'm out in the middle. And I knew guys, but I'd been away a while, and I didn't know the footing. Well, I'm standing there, and everybody's running around, hollering, screaming. Well, probably the most popular guy in school, named Rick Kirkpatrick, still in town, and was class president. That gymnast, all around. All the girls loved him, all that type of thing, and I knew about him. Well,
Now, is his wife going to hear this for the first
no.
time?
Anyway, we're only 15 years old. Anyway, they're horse playing. They're chasing and running, and I didn't see him coming, and he ran into my side. I'm 6'2", weigh 250 pounds, and was muscled. He runs into my side, hits me, bounces off, and lands on his backside, sitting over there. Well, I'm looking around because I don't know what's happening, and he looks up at me and he says, "Now I don't know if you could say this on television, but I guess you can." He says, "You're as big as a tank." And I looked at him. He got up and ran away. And of course, because I was shy, that was really kind of embarrassing because I didn't like being big at the time.
Interesting.
Well, the name stuck. Pedro High, on through the rest of my life. The name is there.
Tank.
Yeah.
Very curious way to come up with a nickname.
Yes.
And do you and he cross paths?
Oh, we
still,
saw him
or-
at the reunion. We
Okay.
chat, and he's around. I'm around.
Yeah.
Yes, we've lasted a long
And
time.
he knows he gave you your
Oh yes,
nickname.
he knows.
Yeah, that's
Well, I've written
funny.
about it in the column several times.
Okay.
Many people ask, well, "How did you get the name?" I wasn't even going to bring it up. Just you were talking about school, and when I got to Dana, there it was.
There it was. Well, then after high school, you became a longshoreman.
Longshoreman. My father was a charter member, longshoreman, and in
Oh.
those days, in
They're
1950.
kind of handed down, aren't they?
Oh yeah, in '51 it was legal. Because they needed, the economy was booming throughout the United States because we were selling everything to the world by then. So they needed a longshoreman. So Harry Bridges deemed that all charter members, people that were at the union in 1934, could sponsor a son or a brother. Well, I had an older brother, 5 years older than I am, who had a wife and 2 children. My father offered it to him. He turned it down. Now, there's this long story, but he did turn it down. My father I'm in high school, 18 years old, and still not too sharp about scholastics. Father came to me, he says, "You want to be a longshoreman?" I'm sure that I shrugged. I'm sure I hate the idea that I did, but I'm sure I said, "I guess so." Right? So he sent me
That was
over.
the extent of your career
Oh,
decision
yes,
making.
right. He sent me over. I signed up, and the next thing I was an ID, and I was an ID for a little while, but they needed it so bad. In January of '52, they gave me an A book, and I've had it ever since. And I didn't know what was going to happen. I mean, I had like I said, I came to your school here twice to go to college, and stood outside and said, "Well, I don't," and then I walked away. And we became basically a career longshoreman, which is, as you know from this area, is one of the great jobs in the world.
Yeah, it certainly
Yeah.
is. Coming to Harbor College would have been good too.
Oh, I think it'd been wonderful, and I certainly would have improved my my scholastic abilities.
Well, I was going to say maybe you would have improved your typing abilities. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Well, tell me about some of your coworkers. I suspect I've heard interesting stories down at the docks.
Coworkers. Now we have. Let me see. I'll give you really quick ones.
Okay.
I mean, we have limited time with 2 quick ones. There was a fellow named Frank Dews. Frank Dews was he was a drinking partner of my father. And these gentlemen were old school, old sailors, old square rig sailors. I mean, these were tough guys, but they all drank. Well, Frank Dews drank more than most. Well, one day at my house, I was in high school, probably 17. Remember, I'm a big guy. Well, these guys are at my house, and it bothered me that they kind of ran the show. So in the backyard, I'm walking out of the house, and Frank Dews was, well, I'd say Frank Dews is 5'9", maybe 150 pounds, and he's at least 30 years my senior. More than that, probably. Anyway, I walked out, and I said something to him in a coarse way, like a dumb kid would. And he looked at me, and he made some, not a bad remark, but something like I should be better behaved. And so I escalated my, probably vulgarity. Frank Dews, with a left hook, reached out and knocked me cold. I mean, I'm a 250-pound young man, and I didn't see him see it coming.
Snotty kid.
And I'm down on the concrete, and I'm shaking my head, and I'm out. I can't get up. And I finally staggered up. He was down alongside me apologizing and all that, and my father came out, and they were all apologizing. And I get up, and I'm looking at this guy, and I mean, you talk about respect. I mean, I wanted to salute and say, yes, sir, from then on out. This guy, this old guy, and about half my size, it just put me right on the ground.
Let's watch that. That old guy was probably younger than I am.
Oh,
right
he's a lot
now,
younger
so
than I am
yourself.
now. Yes, I'm 25 years past what he was. But the idea, and I never realized, and I said, I fought in school, I did all these things, but I didn't see it happen. Well, it turns out that Frank, besides being a longshoreman, was middleweight champion of the Pacific Fleet. And fighters, to get to that level, fighters train, and they train, and they never forget the training. There's guys, there are boxers on the waterfront that would,
I never thought about
if
that,
you realize what they could do to you, would scare you to death.
Well, I know boxing is big with a lot of folks down there, so I guess that kind of fits with that. Now, I also heard you talking one time about the Kissing Bandit. Why don't you talk a little about this
that would be my next story. Yeah, okay. There are more, but we'll go to Herb Froman.
Okay.
I'm a kid, and I heard stories about Herb Froman in San Pedro, the old Front Street, the old PE station, all that. Herb Froman was a longshoreman, but for whatever reason, Herb decided to become a bandit. Herb would go around, stick stuff with a shotgun, sawed-off shotgun, go into places and rob them. Well, he was a tall, good-looking fellow. I didn't know him then. I only knew of him. But if there was a woman involved, like a clerk, he always gave her a kiss on the way out. And that's what he did. Well, Herb eventually is, they find out who it is. I mean, how it's local. They're going to track him down. Somebody's going to tell. Anyway, they catch him. Off he goes to San Quentin. The big headlines of the paper: the Kissing Bandit, Herb Froman off to San Quentin. Now we all know him. Now I'm longshore. This is 1953, probably 5 or 6. He's done some time. I'm working in a gang, and the gang leader. That's a group of men. That's what they were called. Okay. The gang leader said,
today's gangs.
We got a new guy coming in. I said, oh, yeah. He says, Herb Froman. I says, Herb Froman. Yes, that Herb Froman. Oh, my. Well, you're talking Damon Runyon here, right? So, sure enough, the next day, here's Herb. Good, tall, comes in. He says, hello, how are you? Good to meet you and all that. So we go to work. Well, Herb's a good worker. An interesting thing about Herb, whatever you said, and now I don't know if it was a ploy that he just liked, whatever you said, he would do the opposite. Like if you let's say, I don't know if you know about rigging gear, but in the old days, you would rig the gear where it was most advantageous to you. That's where you put the booms where it'd be easiest to work.
Okay.
Well, if you said to Herb, we're going to put the booms down low, he'd say, they're going to be high. And what? Well, after a little while you learn. So when you said to Herb, if you wanted them high, you'd say, we're going to put them down low. He said, no, we're putting them high. Okay, we'd put them high. It was the strangest business. It was like almost like a game. And to this day, I don't know if it was or not. Anyway, time goes on. Now, Herb and I get to be friends. Herb's a horse player. And he tells me this story. One day after work, this is before he went to Quentin. One day after work, he tells his wife, let's go to the track. Now, they had a Model A Ford, and they go up to Santa Anita. You can get into Santa Anita at 9th or 8th without paying. So he goes to Santa Anita, and they bet their last money on some long shot because
the family's last money.
The husband and wife. Now, he's in his work clothes. He came from work, and she's in her cotton house dress, and they're in their Model A. Well, the horse paid some gigantic amount of money. He got like $112 or something along that line. Well, in those days, that was like $1,000.
Wow.
So they're driving back down Huntington Drive, and he says to his wife, honey, where would you like to eat? And she says, I would like to eat at the San Marino Country Club, but we can't go there. We're not dressed right. He says, not whatever he said. He turns into Model A, old beat-up car, work clothes. They turn in the San Marino Club, go down the aisle, right? There's a parking guy. He gets out and he hands the guy $3. And he says, take care. Now, $3. Can you imagine $3?
That was a lot of money back then.
Right.
That's more than I tip right now.
Right. And he says, take care of my car. Well, the guy almost kissed his hand. Movie stars didn't give him $3, right? From that point forward, of course, I don't know how these things happen, but once they realize you're a heavy tipper, everybody's bowing and scraping. They go in, waited on, fawned over. They have the time, spent all the money, spent the whole thing. Get back on a Model A, and now this is a lot of years, and he's telling me one of the greatest times he ever had. Now that,
well, how nice.
yes,
I guess. I'm thinking about the groceries the next day.
I'll tell you one spin off of that. I don't know how the time is going, but spin off of that. My first wife, Nolan, we're up on Los Angeles Boulevard, and I'm in a business besides longshoring where there's quite a bit of money involved. We're going up the thing, and we're just coming from the movies. And I says, I never didn't think I told him at the time, but I said to her, I said, where would you like to eat? And she says, well, I'd like to go to Lowry's, but we're not dressed for it. Herb Foreman popped into my head immediately. I mean, I had a pocket full of money. So I pull it. Now, I happen to have a new Thunderbird, but that's a different thing. I pull into the driveway. I don't know if you've ever been to Lowry's. They got the big glass front doors out in front, the steps coming down. I pull in. There's a parking attendant, right? Of course, one for her door, one for my door. I get out of the car. Now, this is 1968, say. And I gave the guy a $20 bill. Oh. I said, thank you. Take her my car, will you? And he says, oh, sir, yes. Now,
kind of worked nicely, huh?
We went in, and my wife, a darling lady, but we didn't do this hardly. This wasn't our thing. But from that point on, I mean, when they bring the beef right to your table and they serve you right, of course, I'd heard by reading, I like entertainment, so they said the way is the baguette where you have your back against the wall. So when we went in, the maitre d', who was, again, fawning, I says, pardon me, could we sit there? He says, oh, yes, Mr. Because he asked my name. Yes, Mr. Nelson, certainly the table's out. I was just grand. Again, I actually like Herb, only it's many years later.
Yeah.
Couldn't have had a better time. It cost a fortune. Couldn't have had a better time, couldn't have had more fun, and couldn't have built a better memory.
Tank, okay. Let's talk a little about how you got into eventually getting your way to writing the Breeze article. And I have heard stories about your movie reviews that you used to put up. Can you talk about that?
Oh, sure. I think it's an interesting story. I hope so. I'd been on vacation.
I thought so. I wouldn't have asked you about it.
Yeah, so you always hope. You never know who's going to be interested. But I was on vacation, and I hung out at a place in Pedro called Canetti's. It's a seafood down by the fish markets, cafe. That was where I had breakfast every morning, and where people I know and whatever. I came back from my vacation, and a fellow named Ed Fabian, who happens to be my landlord at the time, said to me, and I'm sure and all joking, he says, "Tank, you can't go out of town anymore." And I said, Ed, well, why can't I go out of town? He says, nobody knows what movie to go to. And I honestly didn't know what he meant. I'm thinking, what do you mean? So finally I asked him, I says, well, when you come in here after you see a movie, you're always telling everybody about the movie. And so that's when we figure out what to see. And so there was a laughing and joking. So as that breakfast thing was breaking up, he says, you know what like ought to do? He says, you ought to hang a blackboard out your window and tell everybody what movie to see. And I said, yeah, we all laughed, sure, yeah. Well, I went right up to the hardware. Perry's Hardware. Remember Perry's Hardware up there on Weymouth? I went up to Perry's and says, do you have a blackboard? He says, yeah, we have. It was about 2 by 3. I went back in the crudest possible fashion. I made a couple of holes, got some string, hammered some nails in his windowsill. Of course, it was his building, so I figured I'd get away with it. And I put Moonstruck on the thing because that was a movie that I thought that he should see. So I hung it out the window. Just fool. All I was doing was entertaining Ed.
Did you get into the stars or?
No. Just put Moonstruck. That's all I put. Well, he saw it and laughed and went to see it, and then people would laugh and people would tell me, "Oh, I love that. Oh, that's neat." That type of thing. Well, as soon as people found it amusing or fun or whatever, it became my way of it was my way of talking to Canetti's. Only it was on the blackboard. So I went to movies a lot, and at least once a week I changed the. And I only put out movies that I liked. There was no rating, no anything. I just put if I saw a movie that I thought
if you liked it, it went
up
there.
Right, went up on the blackboard.
Well, how did you get from a blackboard to that leading to TV appearances?
A guy from the News Pilot, a kid, what do you call it? An intern.
Oh, an intern. Oh, okay.
Came by and he says, "I'm really interested in your blackboard. Everybody's in your blackboard," and he wanted to do a story for the News Pilot. Well, we talked, and they brought a photographer out. He called up and brought a photographer out. I used to write on my walls in the apartment because that's how I remember things. I take it felt like a graffiti almost, but anything I wanted to remember, I wrote on the walls. So the photographer comes out, takes pictures, and it winds up on the front page.
So he gets pictures of your walls
the
besides
walls, yes,
your blackboard
yes,
hanging
right.
out.
So
okay.
the story and the whole thing wound up on the front page of the Pilot, colored picture. Can you imagine walking up to one of those boxes and there you are on the picture? I mean, it was. I mean, I'm the News Pilot from Barton Hill. And there you are. And
I sort of get a charge when they have Harvard College pictures. On the front of the paper.
Exactly, same thing. So that started the ball rolling, and then the LA Times came into it. And in that year, I happened to be right about the Academy Awards. I mean, I was.
Oh, you even put the Academy Awards?
Well, no, I had them in my room when they came over to my room. They
that
wanted
was
to
on
see,
your wall.
No, they wanted to see what I do about the. So they came to my the LA Times and the Pilot came to my place, and I happened to be right in the categories, which made not only the Pilot again, but it made the Times, and that's what started it going, and that led to all kinds of fun. That it led to Entertainment Tonight. It led to the Today Show. Dennis Miller. I mean, it was just
no wait. The Today Show, was Katie Couric on it then?
Well, no, yeah, but they filmed it here. Richard Brown or something filmed it here, and
Katie Couric is my.
Well, yeah. Well, she introduced it. She
did.
said.
Okay, that's
she
all
told.
right then.
I think who was the guy that's a reviewer and says you better watch out because this guy's coming or something like that. And they did 6 minutes on the Today Show.
Oh, for
I was still
heaven's
a porter on the waterfront. They came down and filmed me as a porter. They filmed me going into the Kennedys. They filmed the apartment. And there's there's stories on top of stories, of course. But it was great fun. And that's what vaulted the whole thing forward. Just a series of interesting events.
So my hearing that you were a character kind of obviously goes.
Well, I hope it's true. I mean, what could be a better description of somebody, man, woman, child, whoever, to say they're interesting?
So all of that led to your being and writing a regular column.
Well, what happened is Philip Stanfield, who was the editor of the Pilot, asked me if I'd ever wished to, he'd like me to write about what happened. Well, I went to New York. Joan Rivers, this is after a year, I was just bumming along, having a good time. And the Joan Rivers show called from New York. And there's a big story behind all that because it's something that happened here and all that. Well, anyway, I went to New York.
I would have said, yeah, right, this isn't really Joan Rivers.
Well, I mean, it was just, most things in life are kind of luck. But and I could go into what happened here. But I wound up going to New York. The limousine to the airport to the thing, limousine, the Plaza Hotel. It was one grand time. But on the Joan Rivers show, I was with all the big movie reviewers from New York, all the people you've heard about. And did we have a time? I mean, we were laughing and joking and all that, but the biggest fun part for me is, for whatever reason, Joan Rivers decided to feature the longshoreman movie reviewer over the people from New York.
Oh, how funny.
And she gave me 20 minutes, just just the two of us together, just like we're doing here. Yeah. Joan Rivers sitting there, I'm sitting here, we're talking about the movies, why, whatever, playing with the audience, having a marvelous time. Then later they brought out these other people, and you talk about people that were unhappy. They had entourages, and they were fuming, they were worried they were going to leave, they were going to do everything. It was quite a day.
Did you ever wonder what you had to do to get an entourage? I don't have an entourage.
I've never had an entourage. Well, I'm always dressed just like this. I don't own a suit. I don't own a tie. I don't own leather shoes. This is where, if you want me there, I'll go. That's why
there are days I wish I could say the same, but we won't go there.
Well, that's why I didn't get the Academy Awards. The News Pilot wanted to send me the first year, wanted to send me the Academy Awards, and I said, they'll put backstage the whole thing, and I said, well, because I see everybody, and I said, what do you wear when you go? He said, well, we'll rent you a tuxedo. I said, well, then I'm not going. He said, you're a big movie fan, you're crazy about it, and you're not going to go to the... I said, no. There's a commitment in my life. I've worn too many, I was in the Navy suits. I said, no more ties, no more white shirts, funny. No more jackets, no more leather shoes. So no Academy Awards.
So you ended up getting a permanent column then with the News Pilot, the Daily Breeze?
Well, I turned in a story about going to New York. He printed it. Philip printed in the paper. Okay. They got some nice reviews from people and whatever, talk from people.
They enjoyed your writing
And he
style.
said, would you write a column? Now, remember, what I told you about my education. I barely got out of high school. I had D's, absolute awful grades. If one teacher changed an F to a D, or I wouldn't have graduated. That's how poor it was. But I happen to have a daughter who is an editor and a writer, a published writer. And so when Philip said, could you write the column? And I said, well, we'll see. And I called her and I said, could we do this? And I outlined what I could do. She says, oh, yeah, we can do it like this. And I went back and said, okay, we'll try it.
She edits for you.
Everything. I call it to her. I write it. I write it on yellow pads with Bic pens. And I call it to her over the phone in Utah. She puts the periods, the commas, the sentence, the paragraphs, whatever, and she emails it down to the Torrance Breeze.
Right.
And it's in the paper every Saturday, and I'm always amazed.
Well, tell me what some of your memorable columns are. What do you think about that really stand out in your mind?
Oh, memorable columns! My goodness, that's tough. Memorable columns. Well, there's been 700. That's a
you must.
You're in education. I'll go back to the very early column, very first. My editor kind of scratched his head with this one, but I said, I was Peter High, and I'm always wondering about the educational system because I did badly, but I was always wondering about the system because you can be educated if you make the effort. I mean, here's these people standing there saying, please let me teach you. And if you say yes, please teach me, you can hit awfully big heights. What I did is say, no, I'm not interested. That was my position. Well, after I looked back and I began to think, ooh, I missed something. And I started working on it, and I thought, well, there's all these possibilities. But then I thought, there was always this controversy about athletes and their people go to college and they say they don't go to class, they just play football. They don't do this. High school. I mean, and I was in Pedro High, and I know several instances where there was shenanigans, lots of shenanigans.
Let me interrupt 1 second and tell you that most of our football players graduate and get full scholarships.
Now we're talking. That's the kind of program.
Academics. Keep going.
Well, what I thought was, what would cure the whole problem? What would cure the whole problem? Now I don't know that this would be legal, constitutional, whatever, but I thought, why couldn't you have a situation where all athletic programs would fall under this guideline, that a group of teachers, a group of testers could wind up at any school at any time, go in and take, say, the football team or the basketball team or the baseball team or whatever, and say, come with this, we're going to test you. The 10th grade, 11th grade, whatever you're supposed to know at that level, college, whatever, they just pick them up as a group, take them out, have a mobile class thing and sit down and say, here, the SATs along that line, and say, you have to get 800, 900, whatever it is. If you don't get to play anymore.
So this was one of your columns.
Yes, and I did this.
You'd probably get a lawsuit today for discrimination.
But I used Pedro High as the example because that's what I knew. I went with the steps and the arch and the whole thing, and I did it as a story. Like they come to Pedro High and they walk into the gymnasium. I played basketball in the gymnasium a lot.
Sure.
So I had the whole thing. I says, you set up and you say, all right, now sit down, and you have to know this. If you don't reach this level, you don't get to play.
What kind of response did you get to that column?
Well. People loved it.
Really? You weren't drummed out of town?
No. People would stop me on the street and say, "That's a heck of an idea." And of course the problem would be over. I mean, there were all the shenanigans because it didn't matter who you knew or what you knew or who needed you to do this. That would be over because if you couldn't hit this level,
sure,
you couldn't play. And of course the athletic nobody would know it better than you do. Most athletic people wind up working for a living, not being athletes.
That's absolutely right.
So
just to clarify one more time for the public out there, Harbor College is not like that.
Right, yeah. And of course, wouldn't it be wonderful if all schools were like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think more and more the institutions are striving in that direction. So some of the other memorable columns?
Oh,
anything else stand out in your mind?
What is? Oh, I tell you what's fun. Okay. I love commercials, television commercials. There's a commercial on at this time that was wrong. I mean, I'm looking at it, and I still do this, but this was quite a few years ago. I'm looking at the commercial, and I says, that can't happen. That would not happen. So the next day, it was about Miller Beer. The next day, I called Irwindale, and I thought I'd talk to somebody at the brewery there. Nobody's there that wants to talk to you. They put me on to Milwaukee. Well, Milwaukee, somebody answered the phone. I says, who do you like? They asked me who do I like to talk. I said, the president. I mean, what have I got to lose? Sure enough, I get Jerry Goldstein.
No
First
kidding.
I get a secretary, and she says, what did you want to talk about? And I said, about this commercial. She gave me Jerry Goldstein. And he says, yes, can I help you? No, I'm talking to the president of Miller Brewing. And this is a gigantic outfit. So I told him what was wrong with this commercial. And of course, it had to do with a pool table and setting a beer bottle on a pool table. Not done anywhere. I mean, in the sleaziest pool hall in the world, you can't sit your drink on the pool table. Well, he had worked his way through college playing pool. So he says, he'd seen the commercial hundreds of times, he said.
And he never noticed
and he missed it. He was so, he's looking at the content, and he says, I didn't see it. So we got laughing and talking. We talked for, he always wanted to call me back. He says, put your phone down, I'll call you. And my dad, I said, no, we'll talk. Well, anyway, the next day, I get a call from Irwindale, and it's this guy, and he says, this all was in the column. He says, are you Tank Nelson? I said, yeah. He says, I've got an order to deliver you 2 cases of beer. And I said, what? He says, 2 cases of beer. I said, well, I'm kind of stumbling. I don't drink much beer. And he says, but before that, he says, listen, I have a question for you. And I says, yeah. He says, were you in the camper business in El Monte back in the 60s? And I mean, this is in the 80s. And I said, well, yeah. He says, my name is Glenn Chedester, and I was your Coke salesman. Now he's the head guy for Miller, and he's the guy going to deliver the beer.
Oh, funny.
So we talked. And I says, listen, Glenn, we set up lunch at Auntie's, and we were having a wonderful history.
I know that's one of your hangouts.
Oh, I love Auntie's. Yes, I had lunch there today. Love Auntie's. But in this case, he says, I said, could you deliver the beer to my friend John Burridge? John Burridge lives on Ellery Drive. He like big beer drinker, love beer. And he lives on Ellery Drive, just down from 7th Street School, and a little teeny narrow street. And he says, well, yeah, we can do that. Well, I didn't know what's going to happen. They bring one of the big, pardon me, I got to have a little drink of water here.
Don't tell me the truck gets stuck.
No.
in there.
One of those huge,
right.
the beer trucks, those big jobs.
Yep.
This beer truck pulls into Ellery Drive, takes up the whole street. You think it was a movie set. The guy gets out with his 2 cases of beer and his two-wheeler, goes up the steps, across the drive, knocks on the door. And the guy out there says, is this John Burridge's house? And he says, yeah. He says, I have 2 cases of beer for you. Now they're looking out at the side of this gigantic Miller truck. Now, and of course, this whole thing comes into a column. Now, that's the kind of, now, of course, John, his wife, my brother lives across the street, everybody on the street, the people in 7th Street, the whole thing, and it all comes out in a column. So all these people, not because I did the column, but it's not because I did the column. It's just that this is the story that takes place. So when you get to write, there'll be a column about this. Somewhere down next month, there'll be a column about, how I was sitting with the president of the college when I didn't hardly get out of school, and, there'll be all that. But this is the thing that makes column writing just a joy, because
That's
you touch
great.
this person, that person, and
Sure.
then, of course, they touch back. I run into people all the time. I have people, I'll be walking down, like I'm on Paseo, I'll be walking, I need to walk because I need the exercise. People, I see them 50 feet away, and you can see them start looking and looking and looking.
And why do they know this guy?
You know something's up. I don't know them, but I know something's up. And I've had people walk up to me and say, that column, and it was 3 and 4 years ago, that column
no
you wrote
kidding.
about such and such, I want to tell you, blah, 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 and off we go. It is just a grand
Well,
business.
that must be delightful for you.
Oh,
That's just great. I can't believe our half an hour is actually just about up. I mean, for the audience out there, I've got pages of questions here. We didn't get to any of them, but I know I say it every episode, but somehow it really went fast time today. It's hard to believe our show actually does have to come to a close. I want to thank you, Tank Nelson, for joining us today on the President's Roundtable, for sharing your stories, as well as your insights, if that's the right word, into San Pedro and how you got your columns and all of that. It's just been delightful.
Wonderful being here. Wonderful.
That's great. Thanks to all of you for joining us. I look forward to seeing you on future episodes when we'll be meeting other individuals, characters maybe, influencing our lives here in the Harbor area, right here on the President's Roundtable, coming to you on your Harbor College television station, HCTV, Comcast Channel 27. If you have any comments or questions you'd like to share with me, please feel free to email me at president@lahc.edu. Thanks for tuning in.